This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, my name is Gerard Robinson, and I'm the host of In Character. And as you can tell, I'm out of character. I usually have on a jacket or a shirt with a collar, but I was on the run today doing work and was unable to return home. And so you have me as I am. And Heidi, who's joined me tonight, she's an educator, and she knows that educators often have to pivot. So I think I'm in good company with her tonight. Heidi was a part of a group conversation with leaders in teacher prep programs across the country. And she's got a really interesting personal professional story. So I'm glad that she's going to join us for a few minutes to talk about her work. So with that, Heidi, welcome to In Character.
Thank you so much for having me.
And of all the people that I spoke to on our group call, you're the furthest north. You're in New
Hampshire. I am in New Hampshire. I live in New Hampshire, been in New Hampshire, born and raised, and lived in a few different places in New Hampshire, but stayed mostly in the southwest corner. And I teach in Vermont. So I travel 2 hours to teach at a university in Vermont.
And so you are in two states that are pretty rural. When we think of education, we always think of urban, we think of the big cities, but if you look at it pound for pound, most students are actually in rural communities, but rural for you is big R. Talk to us about what it's like as a leader in a teacher preparation program, trying to place students across the area.
It is definitely a challenge because geography, we tend to try to place our students within 30 minutes of the university. Mostly because if they're living on campus and a half-hour drive is far enough away for them, but not too far. Unfortunately, even serving as an adjunct at Keene State, and when I was teaching high school, I would accept student teachers all the time. I had about 20 of them over the course of my 20-year career there, and they traveled about a half hour, 45 minutes to get to me, which is probably that farthest point, because there are very few teachers in the region. In Vermont, we're even finding more of a challenge because in the northern part of Vermont, you have the University of Vermont up in Burlington, and up a little further away from there, you have the NVU Johnson, the Northern Vermont University / Johnson campus, and they have student teachers going out. And we're down in the mid region in Rutland, just outside of Rutland. And so it being rural, and within a half hour, we maybe have 3 or 4 districts that we can tap into. And all of them are very small. So you might have one high school that you can send a student teacher to. And sometimes that teacher might be teaching just high school chorus or just high school band, or sometimes they might be teaching K through 12, general music, middle school music, and high school music. So the opportunities for those placements are dwindling. And especially now, right now, where there's so much remote instruction going on, and we've seen such a devastating blow to music programs nationwide, not just in New England. It's becoming more and more of a challenge to place student teachers and find them good, great teaching placements, and not just plop them into a school because it's within a half an hour of our college. So we want to be able to vet strong teachers and to give our students the best possible student teaching experience they can have. But geography, playing with geography is tough in rural New England.
Absolutely. You mentioned music. You have some beautiful instruments behind you. Talk to us about what attracted you to the music profession as a teacher, and how has COVID-19 impacted the work you do?
That's one of my favorite questions to answer. Born and raised in New Hampshire, I came from a pretty troubled childhood. It was a pretty abusive and transient childhood. We moved around a lot. And so school was my one safe place. And I loved going to school. And when I got into high school, I was a very good student because I wanted I was a grade junkie. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but I loved getting that A. And I really wanted the A. I didn't always get it, but I worked hard to try to get it. So I wasn't necessarily in the top of my class, but I was up there. And I attended a very large high school in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I was in chorus, and eventually I got into the band because they needed a euphonium player, and the band director asked me to play euphonium. I didn't even know how to spell it at the time or what it was. And it's essentially a small tuba. And he asked me if I would join the band, and the band had 165 kids in it. And I was like, what on earth are you thinking? I was a junior in high school. This is very rare to recruit high school students into your band, especially junior. Most kids start a band when they're in 5th grade or 4th grade. So I did, and I learned very quickly. And then I was ready to head off to college. And I was talking to my band director, who was like a dad. He was like a dad to many of us. He had no kids of his own. And I said, well, where should I go to college? I want to be an English teacher. And he told me to go to Keene State, which was in state. And I said, great, because I'm going to be paying off loans for a long time. So going to a state school was definitely a priority. But this amazing euphonium player was the director of music ed at the time there. And I said, but I'm not going to be a music teacher. And he said, well, go to Keene because Doug is there. Well, he knew something about me that I didn't, because Doug became my college mentor, my college father. And what an incredible influence. And so I was in the band for fun. I was in the chorus for fun. I just loved music. I loved everything about what music did to light people up inside and to communicate feelings and to communicate everything. And you could get so much energy out through the course of making and creating music. So I walked into the department head's office one day and I said, I was thinking of maybe changing my major. And he put it on paper. And the next thing I knew, I was a music ed major. And that changed my life. And thank goodness it did, because I can't imagine what I would have done. You know how often people will say, what would you have been if you weren't a teacher? And I never have an answer, because this is all I've ever wanted to be. Because for me, I knew that if I became a teacher, and especially a music teacher, that's where a lot of kids go for a safe space, with a teacher that they can trust, with a teacher that they can open up to, that might be a parent figure if they need one. There are so many magical moments that happen in a music room that don't happen in some other classrooms, simply because as a high school music teacher, we see our kids every single day for 4 whole years. You literally watch them grow up for 4 years, and it's such a gift. It really is. However, that being said, in COVID, I retired from teaching high school 2 years ago and then completed my PhD. And now I have college kids to teach. But I am in awe of what our K through 12 public school teachers, and any teachers, frankly, are going through right now. I know have a very big pile with teaching all of my college classes remotely and what I'm trying to do, but try to teach high school band remotely, try to teach high school chorus remotely, or be told that, well, we're hybrid, so you can have 10 kids, but you have to sing outside and you have to be socially distanced and you can sing with masks, or you can't sing at all. So everything you're used to doing, you have to change. So I got out of there at the right time. And again, I probably would have figured it out and tried to give my kids the best experience possible. But man, these teachers are going above and beyond every expectation.
Absolutely. What do you do to not only recruit teachers, but retain teachers to work in rural communities? Again, we often don't hear that story, and you've lived it. So what words of wisdom for those of us who are trying to be helpful?
I spent 20 years teaching at a rural high school. We had about 300 kids. At our highest, we were up around 500, but it's a town of 6,000 people. And when I got the job here, we had one stoplight. I kid you not. And so I spent the bulk of my career in this tiny little town. And yet I went to a high school that had 2,000 students in it. And I would never have wanted to teach at a larger school. The minute I walked into this tiny high school, I knew I would get to know every student, whether or not they were in my classroom for any class or not. there's a sense of community and family in rural schools that sometimes you don't see in larger schools. I got to see all of my faculty friends, and that's a wonderful thing. Like, it's not just your department. I was my department. I was all alone, and I talked to myself a lot. And I sometimes wished, which was why I loved having student teachers, because then I had somebody to bounce ideas off from and engage with. But the faculty became a family. And like I said, if you're at Shaw's and there's a student that's a grocery store here. If you walked into Shaw's and there's a student working there that didn't even have you in class, they'd say, "Hey, Mrs. Welch, how are you doing?" It's a wonderful gift. Some people don't like that. They want to live in a larger community. And there are some downs to it as well. You might not have a full instrumentation band. And I did everything. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I did chorus, I did band, I did, you name it, guitar, film music, music appreciation theory. I taught everything. So there is that. You're kind of a lone wolf. But I wouldn't have traded it for the world, because that's what I try to tell the students is don't be afraid of rural small areas, because it's a gift. And those kids need strong teachers. I know we all need strong teachers, urban districts, rural districts, we all need really strong teachers. I think that the challenge can be having them stay in those positions. And when I chose to leave my position after building a department that I was very proud of and students that I adored, and I still live in this town, and my kids all go through the schools here, and my son's now in 5th grade here, and he'll go to that high school. But it was one of my student teachers that ended up becoming my successor. And he understood, and we had long conversations about putting down roots, and is this a place you really can see yourself staying for 10, 15, 20 years? And no pressure, you know, if life changes, that changes. But if you think it's just going to be a stepping stone to a big school where you can be part of a huge, you know, program where there's, you know, 47 directors, then maybe this might not be the job for you. So retaining people in these more rural areas and encouraging our students to continue to become teachers, for one thing, because I'm very fearful that our teachers are dropping ship now because of COVID and because of the anti-teacher sentiment that is ramping up yet again. Even though we were all heroes in May, we're all now evil right now for the teachers that don't want to go back to work, and they're all lazy. But wait a minute, a few months ago you said we all should be making $1 million. I'm very confused. And that's concerning, that people that might have thought about being a teacher are going to go, who wants that? Nobody wants that. And so helping the students overcome that rhetoric, but while letting them know that it exists. We don't live in a bubble. And yes, it's a wonderful profession, and I would never change my path. But let them know this is the reality, but guess what? It's worth it.
Well, Heidi, I know I'm excited whenever I have an opportunity to hear you talk about your profession and about your passion, music in particular. I have no musical bone in my body, or maybe with a teacher like you, it could have come out. But thank you so much.
My husband says he plays a mean iPod, so you're probably in that group. Well, there aren't iPods anymore.
Well, I play a mean tabletop, so I think that's a win.
We need music in our schools. We definitely do. It changes.
Absolutely. Good. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for carving out time to talk about your work and what you do. And I look forward to more conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.